Hey everybody, how's it going? I wanted to start off with this social work with adolescents video I'd found for you.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we...
I'm Andrew Wallace. I'm a clinical specialist social worker in a public hospital. And I guess that what that means is that I see teenagers and their families. They come with a range of different difficulties. There's a couple of areas that I really specialise in on, which are eating disorders and kids that have got unexplained medical symptoms, like tummy aches and headaches and those sorts of things. But I also see kids that have got a range of other problems like anxiety and depression, and just their adjustment overall to the illness that they're experiencing. The way that I work with people that come to see me is primarily through family therapy, trying to understand what's happening for the young person in the context of their family. And that's really important to do because the family is really the place that provides all the skills that a teenager needs to feel secure and to feel attached, to be able to learn to solve problems. So I do spend some time with the kid on their own, but primarily I try and have everyone sort of working together on a sort of a common direction around that. So when parents come, what they could expect is that they're going to have an opportunity to explain what their concerns are, that everyone in the family's concerns would be understood, to try and understand where those concerns started, and really importantly, what strengths and assets they have and how those can be utilised to try and get them into a better spot. From a social work point of view, two of the really key take-home messages are that social workers see parents as very much a resource to help kids get back on track when they're struggling, whatever the issue actually is. And the second thing is that social workers can help with some of the issues that can get in the way of parents being able to feel as they can effectively look after their kids. So when there's financial stress, when there's marital conflict, when there's, extended family difficulties going on, the things that really can distract parents from what they need to do for their kids. And social workers are interested in trying to help at all those different levels to try and get something a more stable set up so that parents can concentrate on using their skills to help their young person. To come and see someone like me, people can make a self-referral. They can phone and inquire about the service. They will need a GP referral to back that up, but I think it's always good when parents inquire for themselves because it really makes you feel that they're motivated and wanting things to get worked out. A GP is also a great source of information about who to go and see and how different services in your area work. The school is a fantastic source of information because they will have referred other young people to get help many, many times, and often have a list of people who they're confident in referring to. And this word of mouth through parents is also another really, a nice source. I think keeping in mind that different people and different families tend to fit better with different types of personalities. So if you have the experience of going to see someone who don't like them first up, then it's okay to see someone else, or alternatively persevere and really get through that initial phase so that you can really find out whether it's a good fit.
All right, so that's a little primer on adolescent social work as we get into Chapter 7. I know we started and nearly finished through early and late adolescence. So the social dimension and some of the gender roles. So there is a shift towards androgyny. greater diversity in gender roles and an increasing emphasis on equality or role sharing. With adolescent girl development, they ask, what on the way to womanhood does a girl give up? Um, a book, Meeting at the Crossroads by Lynn McKell Brown. Because it can be hard on the way to womanhood, especially nowadays. Like, do you do career first? Do you do the family first and then a career? Do you try to do both at the same time? Which, because they don't carry the baby, men don't have as many of those questions. There certainly could be a stay at home dad, but that's some of the stuff that comes up. Also, the most significant factors related to depression is body image. So, there's a lot of good stuff on social workers and body images. And I wanted to show you guys that. This is specific to coronavirus, and that's why I thought it was important to take a look at. But a quick primer on this first, like the connection between eating disorders and body image. So this is more specific to conversations with adolescents and the psychology behind body image. So I'm going to mute the first part again because it could set off a trigger. So you may not diagnose schizophrenia in adolescence, but you very well could diagnose addiction, alcoholism, and anorexia. So this was a talk given recently about body image in relation to the lockdown specifically too. So this was in Cherry Creek, organized by Cherry Creek Women. And this is Mary Jilkovsky talking. So
4 years ago, a cup of mocha changed my life. Let me take you back to when I was just 17 years old. I had just won a trophy at a major bikini fitness competition, one of the largest in the country. This was me. I prepared for this competition for 6 months. I worked out every single day. I dieted hardcore, and I thought that revolving my life around fitness would help fix my poor body image struggles, but it only made things worse. While everybody was telling me how great I looked, how fit I was, how dedicated I was, My mental health was just falling apart. And I was obsessed with anything that went in my mouth that was not on my diet, even if it was just a handful of almonds. What nobody knew was that behind this perfect bikini body was a broken girl that was completely obsessed with her weight. Have you ever been in this position? Have you ever been obsessed with your weight or how your body looks in general? Unfortunately, too many of us struggle with not liking how we look. Some of us, we go to extremes like I did, and some of us, we want to change a few things. You know, a little tighter here, a little smoother there, a lot thinner everywhere, but not too thin, of course, because curves are in, ladies and gentlemen, but only here and here, but nowhere in between. So flash forward to a few months after this bikini competition, I get a mid-afternoon text from my mom. Want to meet for coffee at 12, she asks. Sure, I'll be there soon, I replied. And as I'm driving to go meet her, I get another text from her. It says, sitting outside, I got you a mocha. A mocha? A mocha? How could she? The calories, the sugars, the dairy. Didn't she know that I was on a diet? I'm driving, I'm so angry, and as I pull up to the cafe, my mom who's sitting outside, she sees me crying, runs over to my car door, tries to open it, but I wouldn't let her in. No, Mom, I just can't believe you'd get me a freaking mocha, I screamed as I closed the door and drove away, feeling instantly ashamed at how I just lashed out on her. As I'm driving, I'm having one of those ugly cry moments. You know, it's like what Oprah refers to when you're crying so hard you can't breathe, you got snot coming out of your nose, it's not pretty like the movies, it's really ugly. That was me in that moment. And at this rock bottom, I get another text from my mom. It says this. That's the real text. I just want you to know that I love you very much, and I am here for you anytime you need me. As I read the words on the screen, I paused. I finally stopped crying. I took a deep breath, so relieved that she'd already forgiven me. And I let myself feel her love. Because my mom loved me when I couldn't love myself. In this moment, I also realized that my body image struggles robbed me of so many of life's beautiful experiences. I mean, what should have been a lovely coffee date with one of my favorite people turned into an absolute disaster because of my fears about food. My body image took away from so much of me, and I missed out on so much of my life because I was too busy hating myself. Have you ever felt like you missed out on your life? Maybe you didn't go to the pool party because you didn't want to get in a swimsuit. Or if you did go, you didn't take your clothes off to go in the water because you didn't want people to see you. Or you spent the party obsessing over the calories in the cookie instead of spending it connecting with your friends and loved ones. I've been there one too many times. I mean, I missed out on the little things like baking cookies with my little sister. She's in the audience right now. And I missed out on the big things like my graduation parties, where I was too scared of the calories in the cookies, so I didn't go. And also my grandfather's 70th birthday party, where my grandma had cooked all of this delicious food, and I refused to have a single bite because I was on a diet. And we usually use this term body image quite a bit, but what does it mean? We usually use body image to describe how we feel about ourselves, particularly our bodies. And because of rising concerns and negative body image struggles, a lot of people have tried to help girls and women especially feel more positively about their body image. This idea of body positivity has become really popular lately. Let's all feel really good about our bodies and like how we look, which is great. It's definitely a step forward. But what if all this hyper focus on our body's image, whether it's positive or negative, is actually what's causing all the insecurities, discomforts, and lack of confidence in our bodies in the first place? I mean, we already live in such an image-driven society. Somebody even called our generation the selfie culture. So not only do we see our own image reflected back to us in the mirror when we're getting ready in the morning, but we also see our image in a selfie, if you happen to be into that. But if not, you also see everybody else's selfie, and usually it's their perfect, picture perfect selfie on social media every single day. I mean, it's no wonder that 90% of women report feeling unhappy with their bodies and wanting to change something. 96%. 96% of us struggle with body image, but our bodies are not an image. They're an experience, and they're a beautiful experience. So we cannot keep letting our body image ruin our life experience. That afternoon, after getting that loving text from my mom, I realized the true cost of my obsession with my body image, missing out on my life. And I also made a decision to change my life. I made a decision to not only heal my own body image struggles by actually not focusing on my image and instead just living my life. And I also made a commitment to help any woman who's ever hated herself shift her focus and change her life. Actually, I have an exercise for you. It's a simple 3-step process that's scientifically proven to help you do just that. Shift your focus and get out of those negative thought patterns anytime you're feeling not good about yourself. So the first step, you're gonna pause. Just like I did when I got this text, pause and face what you're feeling. I mean, it's so easy to deflect and push away and try to avoid the situation. How many of us stay busy just to avoid what we're feeling? So guilty. But the difficult thing to do is to pause. Next, breathe. And this part's really important. As you breathe, focus energy and attention to the area around your heart. This is going to help shift your focus from your mind, from those negative thought patterns, to your heart, towards unconditional love for yourself. So as you breathe, just picture sending all that energy to your heart space. And lastly, let yourself feel the love. And notice how I said let yourself, because a lot of us, we say, just love yourself, but that's a lot easier said than done. You first have to give yourself permission to feel your own love and give yourself some compassion. Think of at least one thing that you can appreciate or you love about your body or yourself in general. Talk to yourself as if you're your own mom or best friend. Pause, breathe, and let yourself feel the love. Actually, let's all do this together. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but wherever you're at, just straighten up a little bit. And now pause right here with me. Take this moment for yourself. Now take a deep breath. And as you breathe, picture sending all that loving energy to this area around your heart. And now let yourself feel the love. And think of one thing that you can appreciate about yourself right now. How did that feel? So the next time you don't feel so good about yourself, maybe you don't like how you look that day, or your hair is not cooperating with you, or you're just struggling with self-worth in general, remember to pause, breathe, and let yourself feel the love. Because in doing so, you will turn those lowest moments into your greatest strength. In fact, I was actually preparing for this exact talk at that same cafe while happily sipping my mocha.
All right, so there's a lot of stuff to digest there, but mostly just some of the adolescent struggles and things that challenging to us. So nowadays you're kind of inundated with all of those different things and challenges with the social dimension. We'll go over this Thursday a bit more, but with the social dimension with romance, I mentioned sexuality as a broad term, including all of our sexual thoughts, feelings, values, beliefs, actions, and relationships. Behavior is just behavior, including holding hands, and then sexual identity is a major developmental task of adolescence. So this is where you're kind of learning those things, learning what you want to do moving forward into the future. So one of the sexual behavior things, there's the activity, oral sex. So over 40% of both boys and girls report having received that in 2015. So this is 6 years old already. They say this is because of the adolescent rationale. It's not as special and still a virgin, etc. So it's one of the research studies done by this book. Now with sexual identity, there is some LGBTQ youth, and that includes gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, and even questioning. So teens disclosing their homosexuality with increasing regularity and doing so at a younger age. It's about 3.8% of the adult population identifies as gay or lesbian. That was 6 years ago. And the year it became legal to have a gay marriage. So when one twin is gay, the other is gay more than 50% of the time. So that's another research study they've done. And because of the mental health challenges with that, or even harassment, there's 2 to 3 times more likely attempting of suicide because of that coming out of the closet. With harassment and bullying. So 80% of adolescent boys and girls have reported being sexually harassed by their peers through cyberbullying. And that's over half the adolescents that have been bullied online. Over a quarter have been bullied repeatedly through cell phones or the internet. So texting didn't come out until about 2003, 2004. The same with Wi-Fi, wireless signals. So they have a laptop. And then the social media accounts. I think Facebook was like 05 and 06, just after MySpace. And, that's where the cyberbullying takes place. And that's over half the young people that do not tell their parents about that experience. And the most common form of cyberbullying occurs through instant messaging. So that could be on Facebook or AIM and stuff like that, with most victims being in middle school. So we didn't have that as much growing up, only because there was no internet and there was no text messaging and cell phones at that point. So it has become more prevalent because it seems that many kids do have cell phones at a young age, and the internet connection is everywhere. And then with COVID, that was the only way to communicate for a while, which we're still carrying over into the end of this year. So it started in the beginning of 2020, about March 2020. Now here we are in November doing a virtual class in 2021, about 18 months later. Also, social strengths and hazards, so adolescent risk behaviors such as substance use and greater violence, like schools, dating relationships, and at home. Also the after-school programs that are associated with improved school performance. One interesting stat was that working 15 to 20 hours a week improves a student's self-esteem and school satisfaction. And then working students' grade point averages are higher than those non-working. But if they did work more than 20 hours a week, that actually starts having the negative effects. So, part-time school, part-time work is okay, 20 hours of school and 20 hours of work. But when you start getting more than that, that's why they have us sign off on more than 19 hours of credits in a semester, because it can be overwhelming. Now, adolescent pregnancy is something that comes up. That's every year. The U.S. has one of the highest teen birth rates of all the developed countries. So that's something to consider. And 6% of all women aged 15 to 19 have had a pregnancy. 1/3 have a repeat pregnancy within 2 years. That's partly why we had gone through the, um, knowing your cycle and knowing fertility and things of that nature. There's also a historical trend that U.S. teen pregnancy rate has been declining over the past 20 years. And that's been continuously over the past 20 years. Also, the birth rates are higher among Hispanic and Black adolescents compared to white adolescents. I think the birth rate in America has finally gotten below 1.5 per couple. So most couples only have about 1 or 2 children. And one of the big risk factors is poverty. So the inability to pay for other extracurricular activities or going to see a movie or having things going on in your neighborhood. And the only entertainment, maybe sex. That's where pregnancy is a risk factor there. Also with adolescent pregnancy, there's the consequences of early pregnancy, and that would be infant. The infant suffers because the short term, there's low birth weight. There's also infant mortality, and then long term, there's less education, behavioral and emotional issues, and then teen pregnancy and poverty. The mother can have challenges because in the short term, they have birth complications and possible mortality. In the long term, there's possible less education because you have to take time off to have the children. And also lower socioeconomic status, welfare dependency sometimes, more unstable relationships, and more unintended births. With the father, the short term is they're more involved than in the past, but this tapers after the first year. Sometimes they can face hostility from the mothers, and they're not the decision maker. Long term, they can suffer also from low paying jobs, maybe having to take time off work or school to help with the baby. Now, one of the things is they say sex education, that's the prevention of adolescent pregnancy, is dependent on this. And then it does say, research says that the abstinence only programs fail to educate sexually active students about responsibility, how to do things and not get pregnant or STDs. I wanted to finish on this slide as I wanted to do the same cut in at about half the class so you guys have time for preparing your presentations that you're either filming on this YouTube live venue or bringing into class on Thursday. So next week we have Thanksgiving. So that's why I've already posted the final paper. You can start on that early. You got 10 days over Thanksgiving, a week when we come back, and then we'll turn it in before the assignment so that you're not intruding on the other finals weeks. So finishing on this today and starting with it on Thursday. So alcohol and drug use. The majority of high school students report that they have consumed alcohol, began binge drinking. And so the majority, that's 64%, almost 2/3 of high school students report that they've consumed alcohol. Although binge drinking is decreasing a little bit, it's only 17% for 12th graders. So a little bit of prevention efforts have helped those numbers. There's also 3 factors that differentiated the problem drinkers from other adolescents. Jesser's problem theory. So if it's the personal qualities or the social environment you grow up in, if like everybody else is drinking around you, it seems normal behavior. Often folks join in. And then there's other patterns of behavior. So the effective intervention programs, one of them used to be called DARE, to keep kids off drugs, but it does not have a sustained effect. So that's some of the recent research on this. And then some effective prevention is strengthening protective factors while reducing risk factors that increase vulnerability to drug use. So, doing more of that preventative education, that's some of the stuff that we had done, and they've shown up in, um, you know, the research and data. So for those of you that don't remember DARE, I just want to do kind of a brief update because this is what DARE, um, you know, failed and showed why it failed. And there's a lot of important details about this. So here's the most recent update. We'll start with on Thursday.
Hi, my name is Dr. David Eifert. I'm a medical doctor and former Goldman Sachs banker. Today, I want to share with you an important story from American history. I'm hoping it will serve as a wake-up call and open your eyes to a critical decision you must make today, a decision that will affect.
The 80s and 90s were a hodgepodge of anti-drug nerds trying to ruin our cool lives by telling us drugs weren't copacetic. Eggs on frying pans, this is your brand on drugs. Learning it from your dad.
I learned it by watching you.
And the granddaddy of them all.
People will tell you that drugs are cool and that everybody's doing them. But you know what? You're wrong.
DARE. Today we're learning how the DARE campaign was a bigger failure than you realized. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the Weird History channel. All right, kids, let's take a non-hallucinogenic trip back to the 80s. Some of the earliest studies of DARE's effectiveness exposed DARE as being a pretty useless program for keeping teenagers off of drugs and alcohol. It seemed DARE's zero-chill educational approach to keeping these curious, hormonal, rebellious little hooligans off of drugs was not working, and in fact was having the opposite intended effect. Turns out, teenagers are less of a learn by riveting PowerPoint presentation and more of a do it and see if we die kind of learners. They might have been taught to say, just say no, but they were way more likely to say, ah, yes, to a bag full of those items they learned about in school if they completed the DARE program than those who didn't. If only DARE had listened to its dad and told them this would happen. Who taught you how to do this stuff? Smart. The program that inspired and birthed DARE also failed in its earlier days, suffering from the same arrogant idea that students would blindly listen to an authority having never seen a John Hughes film or seemingly been a teenager. But when SMART reached out to DARE to inform them of the changes made to better the program by making it work, DARE resisted. It is, after all, right there in its name. The most damning study was commissioned by the National Institute of Justice and conducted by the Research Triangle Institute that said the program was occupying space and hoarding funding from other programs that actually had value and, worked. The NIJ never published the findings, and DARE was a dud. So the charade continued in schools across the nation. Meanwhile, our fragile youths were being corrupted by the temptation created by the very thing meant to keep them on the straight and narrow, the temptation of knowledge. As mentioned, DARE was so bad at keeping teens drug-free, it accidentally turned them into little Jim Morrisons thanks to a fun social psychology phenomenon known as the boomerang effect. Basically, by telling somebody they shouldn't do something because they might die, it makes the person morbidly curious to test that theory. Cheating dead? Sounds fun. Couple that with teenagers' very loose grasp on how fragile life is, and well, you're gonna tech dumb kids to do some experimenting. DARE might have been saying doing lines of cocaine can cause your heart to stop beating. But all those rebellious teens heard was, that'll show, Dad.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
They did have a lion mascot named Darren, and pretty sure Smart didn't, so, they knew what kids like. Despite mountains of overwhelming evidence, the general public stood by the DARE program throughout the 90s. Parents loved DARE. It was nice. It had good intentions. There were police involved. They got to talk to your kids about drugs, so you didn't have to. There was a little mascot. What's not to love? Who cares if it was a giant waste of time and money? DARE settled into their impeccable reputation by having the audacity to say, knocking DARE is like kicking your mother or saying that apple pie doesn't taste good, ignoring that some apple pie is nasty and it might not taste good. And look, some mothers might need to be kicked. What if your mom wasn't moving? You needed to see if she was alive. A little kick might be all that's standing between her and death. And now, since everything is bad and facts are alternative, now there's a push to bring DARE back to school. Oh, did you think this story was not going to involve Jeff Sessions? Because this story definitely involves Jeff Sessions. Former Attorney General and ex-Keebler elf Jeff Sessions said in 2017 that, despite research to the contrary, he still believed DARE worked. Why? Well, because he just did. That's enough to spend money on things that objectively don't work, right? I mean, case in point, the wall. At least DARE was cheap, right? Oh no, DARE cost a ton of money. DARE the Lion does not work for free, guys. There was a lot of demand for meddling lion mascots who didn't do drugs and demanded the same life standards for everyone in the 90s. What started local to Los Angeles soon spread to an estimated 75% of the country and was so vastly supported that local, state, and federal governments gave the program somewhere between $200 million to $2 billion just in the year 2003. Well, after several studies proved it ineffective. Think about that. $2 billion to fund a program that fundamentally did not work. Only after several years worth of research that could no longer be ignored and a detailed financial audit did the government stop hemorrhaging money into the program. The idea behind the original DARE curriculum was simple. Tell kids about the devastating consequences of cigarettes, alcohol, and illegal drugs, and they'll be less likely to use them. Foolproof, right? In theory, it should work. In practice, it did not. But lazy teachers who didn't want to come up with a better idea and police officers who just needed to show they were trying were convinced that education was their best tool when it came to prevention, without realizing that such a direct approach may not work on young children. Current DARE president Frank Pegarios once said, everyone believed that if you just told students how harmful these substances and behaviors were, they'd stay away from them. Unfortunately, young kids weren't as receptive to the education as a prevention approach. School is boring. Learning is hard. Everybody just wants to go home, watch TV, and eat snacks, and not hear about lung cancer when you're 12 years old. Despite this, the program continued. It was, after all, the 80s, and I can tell you, people hated drugs in the 80s.
You know, getting into drugs and being high is a real stupid thing to do.
Every decade needs a scary boogeyman to rally behind and blame all of our deep-rooted societal problems on. And in the 80s and into the 90s, the blanket term drugs was the 9/11 of the times. And who was steering this illegal caravan of bad hombres? A sweet little old lady by the name of Nancy Reagan. In the early 1980s, America's grandma had it with all of these drugs and demanded the youths of America just say no. First Lady Nancy went from school to school telling children to just say no to all of these drugs with a t-shirt. Once she'd absorbed enough child's fear to energize herself, Nancy would swing into the occasional rehab center to gather horrible tales of people. She then shared these horror stories with all of America, which in turn made the whole country say, hell no, to people who said hell yes to drugs.
Today, there's a drug and alcohol abuse epidemic in this country, and no one is safe from it.
And the plan worked. A boogeyman was created. The Reagan administration's pulverizing advocacy for anti-drug causes resulted in 64% of Americans in 1985 believing drugs were the number one issue in the nation. Sorry, AIDS.
So won't you join us in this great new national crusade?
Nancy's PR campaign worked, and America was all in on DARE. Yes, teach our kids the perils of drug addiction, Darren. Give the people what they want. But like the cordless phone, beepers, and the Rachel, DARE couldn't make it past the 90s, as it became harder to ignore the evidence that the program was deeply flawed and an abject failure. Move over drug abuse resistance education and make way for the snazzy new program with a very unfortunate name, Keeping It Real. The program Keeping It Real replaced DARE in 2009 in middle schools and eventually expanded to elementary schools in 2013. Choosing to forego the 45-minute dreary lecture that children normally enjoy, Keeping It Real opts for a more interactive model that teachers and DARE officers noted children didn't hate. Student engagement was markedly higher. Not a regular anti-drug program, it's a cool anti-drug program.
When it comes to trimming your balls, you've got to level up your game.
The brand new Lawnmower 4.0, the 4.0 had.
You can tell the surly teen to just say no until you're blue in the face and pat yourself on the back for all the good work that you did that day. But in the real-life scenario that this same teen is offered a fistful of bud, the odds are pretty high they panic and say, okay, sure, and just take some of that devil's cabbage. Keeping It Real arms teens with more tools in their belt by approaching potential drug solicitations in more realistic terms. The core of the program is in the acronym: refuse, explain, avoid, and leave. Real proposes at first offering an explanation for why they don't want to do something, or if possible, attempt to avoid the issue. I see Billy is offering meth to my classmates. I think I'll take a different route home and maybe avoid Billy for the day. And finally, if that doesn't work, they can leave. Oh, right, I don't have to do meth. I have a body autonomy, and I can just leave and go somewhere where there is no meth. The great thing about this program is it's applicable to so many other scenarios in these young kids' lives. The goal of Keeping It Real is to help kids get out of any situation that makes them uncomfortable, almost as if teenage drug use is a symptom of being a complicated, growing, changing person trying to fit into a society of insecure, relentlessly cruel teenagers and not the cause of all their problems. And you know the best thing about Keeping It Real? It actually works. The results so far have been overwhelmingly positive, according to a report from the Scientific American that included students who completed Keeping It Real indicated they used drugs and alcohol less than those in the control group that did not. The report claims the skills and ideas taught by Keeping It Real are more likely to stick with students and reduce substance abuse at a rate that was 72% higher than the control group. The old boring snooze fests of their past have been replaced with student interaction and group work, teaching them various ways to just say no to drugs. According to Sergeant Christine Rapp of Indiana, a DARE officer for 16 years, the interaction and group work are awesome because we learn by doing much more than by hearing. When they learn the ways to say no to friends, they absolutely love getting up in front of the class and acting those out. The world doesn't need any more drug addicts or alcoholics. But what they definitely do need are more improv troops. Did DARE keep you away from drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.
I love it when my contact rolls back in my eye. It's like a gross game of hide and seek.
All right, so we'll get more into the stuff from DARE on Thursday. Enjoy the middle of the week. Take the time to get caught up on everything is open to be turned in. So see you guys then.